I don't care what happens the rest of the day. I've had it. I've had enough. It's 2:30 on a Friday afternoon, but am I looking forward to an exciting, fun-filled weekend? I don't think so. I'm getting in my most comfortable PJs right this minute, and I'm pulling the covers over my head. And that's the extent of my exciting weekend. All weekend. I will be getting some serious sleeping done, with some fitful dozing, some snoring as I snooze, and with a few occasional naps thrown in for variety. Don't even try to call me until Monday. I just called my supervisor and told him that I'm sick and taking the rest of the day off. Well, I am sick and tired of how this entire week has gone. I'm living in a madhouse. I am spoken in my head with a Cockney accent. It actually started last Sunday afternoon. The boss called to ask about a project that we'd been brainstorming last week. Well, he'd thought about it since Friday afternoon and decided that he needed a report done by Monday around noon. That meant I needed to start immediately. Since I don't really have a life other than my career, of course I responded that I was already pulling up the file on my computer. Picking up my coffee cup from the dining room table a few feet away, I turned too quickly, stepped on the cat's tail, who howled loud enough to bust an eardrum, causing me to throw my coffee in the air, which unfortunately landed on the keyboard. I heard some sizzling. The lights flickered a couple of times, which scared the cat again, who grabbed at my jeans with his claws. Note to self, I've got to get that cat declawed. Once the scratches had stopped bleeding and a Band-Aid was taped carefully over the ointment, I soothed the cat's ruffled feelings and fur and put him outside. Now to assess the damage to the computer. Is it fried? Or is it just the keyboard that's met its early demise? Okay, computer's fine. I just need to buy a new keyboard. And I would gladly have wasted that hour getting to the shopping center. But my troubles were only just beginning. Backing out of the driveway, I completely missed the rake that some nut had left leaning against the trunk. Upon reflection, that might have been me since I was raking the yard earlier in the day. The punctured tire went flat immediately. It could have been worse. I could have been driving down the highway doing the speed limit when the tire blew. I try to look on the bright side, usually, half-full glass sort of twit that I am. While waiting on the tire service to arrive, I felt the beginnings of frustration start. Bad things are supposed to happen in sets of 3, I've heard. I'd already met my quota, so I should be good the rest of the day, right? I mean, I don't like to tempt fate. Not that I believe in fate, but sometimes things happen that are just too coincidental. Like the cosmos is against me, or I've done something wrong and the universe is bringing retribution down on my head. Again with the Cockney accent. Oh, did I mention that sometimes I get a little paranoid? Once in a while, but only when the universe is out to get me. 45 minutes later, I was standing in my front yard on my cell phone talking to Sharon, the customer service rep, who assured me that the truck was on its way and should be there any time. When it turned the corner, its passenger front tires screeching and smoking. I waved, and the driver pulled in behind my car in the driveway. "What's up?" I gestured toward his vehicle's smoking front end. "Well, I seem to have a bit of a problem myself, but that's my job. I'll have it fixed in a jiffy, and then yours'll be a snap, Missy." I held out my hand to him. "Name's Rowena. Missy's the next-door neighbor." He blinked at me. "Just kidding," I added with a smirk. Needless to say, my attempt at humor did not endear me to the repair guy. Whatever. He seemed to take it as a personal insult that I was funnier than he was. He kept sending little side glances that were supposed to be transmitting invisible drop-dead signals. Whatever. I decided to leave him to his work and went inside to watch him from the side window. It took him 20 minutes to change his own tire, then he started on mine. The doohickey that loosens the lug nuts wasn't working, and he was really putting some muscle into it. My car was bouncing up and down like it was at a nightclub, and his face was turning a strange shade of red. Not, I might add, due to the weather temperature, which was a balmy 68 degrees. The dance ended when he pulled so hard on the wrench that my car fell off the car jack and started rolling backwards down the driveway, only stopping because his behemoth tow truck was blocking the entrance. 2.5 hours later, the police had finished with the accident report. The tire repair service had sent a different guy with a different machine thingy to actually remove my tire from my car, and I was exhausted. "Nice doing business with you, Regina," the original driver cackled as he cranked his motor. I didn't bother to tell him that not only was my name not Regina, it wasn't even Rowena, which he had believed at the time, in spite of the fact that he was holding my work order with my real name, Harper. You'd have thought that would have stood out in his memory, which should have been verified. Oh well, I believe in letting bygones be bygones. I was just relieved that he was almost gone. I found a new keyboard at the tech store in the shopping mall. It was a matter of 15 minutes and $15. Why can't everything be that simple? I picked up a burger on the way home so I could get started right away on the report and finished up a rough draft by 1:30 in the morning. I was tired before I started and was asleep 2 minutes after my head hit the pillow, which explains why I was sleeping very soundly the next morning when I was jarred awake by the ringing cell phone. Was all I could muster. Harper, you better be on your way with that report. That got my attention. Without replying, I threw the phone on the bed and started shoving clothes around in the closet, trying to find something to wear that wasn't too uncoordinated. Thankfully, we're allowed a relaxed dress code, and so mostly it's trying to find a clean blouse to go with my jeans. Half asleep still, I reached for just the right top and crash. Down came the entire rack, rattling the cat, who promptly climbed my jeans halfway to my knees. Drat, I have simply got to make time to get that feline declawed. Shrugging, I mentally promised myself to clean up the closet mess later. This accident didn't seem so strange to me at the time because I was late and in a hurry, and everybody knows that's when you're going to make mistakes, right? Totally understandable. Yesterday was already fading in my memory, and Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves was blasting from the stereo as I turned into the office parking lot an hour and a half late for work. Hey, I had a good reason. I worked on a Sunday, starting my work week early. Surely the boss would cut me some slack. He met me by the door. Where's the report? I handed him the folder. He looked at it, at me, then back at the report before stating with a puzzled look, "Is this a joke? A manual on how to set up your new keyboard?" I grabbed the plastic folder out of his hand and headed back to my car. "Be back in 20 minutes. I tossed over my shoulder. "And you might want to check your shirt, Harper. It's inside out." I caught that final suggestion as I was leaving the building. It was downhill after that. The new secretary had brought homemade taco soup for the office staff. I had to make a second trip home to change clothes after the bowl mysteriously landed in my lap. On the way home, the traffic light was turning from orange to red just as I drove under it. I heard the police siren before I saw the cruiser. The officer didn't buy any of my story, even though most of it was the complete and honest truth. "There's half of my grocery money gone for next month," I grumbled as he handed me the ticket. Now I know personally why Monday is one of the least popular days of the work week. But Tuesday wasn't much better. I went in for my regular hair appointment and ended up with a new stylist who totally misunderstood me when I said a little off the top and a trim on the bottom. When I left the shop, I was sporting a new cut that was somewhere between a mohawk and a mullet. Not flattering at all, and to think they still made me pay for it. The indignity of it all. Wednesday, I lost a heel from my only pair of Jimmy Choo knockoffs and twisted my ankle doing it. Most of that day was spent barefoot in the office, hobbling around like the hunchback of Notre Dame. Thursday brought wind and rain, and in trying to get out of it as quickly as possible, I closed the locked car door too soon, trapping my jacket securely in the door frame. With the wind whipping the rain in my face, it was a good 5 minutes of soaking before I could wrestle the key out of my bag and free myself. This did wonders for my mullet mohawk, by the way. But this morning was the final straw. Late again, I was trying to get out of the house when the cat, who, before you say anything, had been fed, began twining himself around my ankles. No, I don't know what his problem was, but just as I stepped down onto the porch, he made one last sinuous slither between my calves, and favoring my sore ankle, I tripped and landed very clumsily on my own sidewalk, in full view of the cute next-door neighbor who'd come out in his pajamas to take his trash to the curb. He hurried over to make sure I was okay, and just as he scooped me up, his wife came out onto their porch, saw us, and started screaming using the most unladylike language you've ever heard. She was even suggesting horrible things about his parentage and abusing his mother's reputation. Well, it was one thing for her to be screeching at her husband, but nobody calls me a homewrecker and gets away with it. So I started yelling back. The police were called, and wouldn't you know, it was the same officer who gave me my traffic ticket on Monday. He didn't believe much of my story this time either, even though the whole incident was completely innocent. But at least he only gave all of us a warning to keep the noise down and to stop causing a public disturbance. The wife next door stayed on her porch talking loudly on her cell phone in an indignant tone and glaring at me until I left for work. And I had a hard time convincing my boss that I hadn't made up the whole story as a cover for oversleeping. I got back from lunch at 2 o'clock, just in time for an emergency meeting in my boss's office. He has just announced that my coworker, who was only marginally involved in the project we've been working on all week, and the one for which I stayed up all night Sunday night, that coworker was just named the project leader. What a crock. That's it. I'm done. This has been the most horrible week ever. I'm going to bed now. And when I wake up Monday morning, the world had better be nicer to me. I think the universe owes me a few years of peace and prosperity after what it's put me through the last 5 days. Blimey.